Hey, and welcome to another conversation with Definitive Insight, a short podcast bringing together learning leaders that use data and analytics to drive their strategies and professional lives, as well as an opportunity to talk about all of our honest leadership journeys as real people as we learn and sort of feel our way through these experiences. I'm joined today by Travis Muhlestein, currently the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at GoDaddy and a seasoned leader that I'm really excited to talk about. Welcome to the show, Travis.
For inviting me here. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, so a tiny bit about Travis. Travis is, like I said, a seasoned leader. He's been around the block a few times with some of the biggest names in the industry. He's got a passion for driving strategic direction and technological innovation using data to lead the way through his products. He's led global teams to create those products with billions of dollars in revenue. His experience spans from startups to global businesses, and he's known for the transformational leadership and scaling needed to get from step A to step B as companies are trying to go for the big game. Travis has a proven track record of building high-performance teams and delivering industry-leading results for some of the biggest names, like I mentioned before, starting as a software engineer for Windows at Microsoft, and then going through multiple leading roles at Microsoft, including Ad Center and Xbox divisions, later moving on to be the head of global product development for NVIDIA, and also finding time in his personal life to lead his personal communities and do some 3D printing on the side in between all of that. So really excited to have you here, Travis, especially given the scale and range of your experiences and really going from an entry-level, engineering role all the way up through the ranks, which is a great setup for our conversation today. How did you tell us just a tiny bit about that role from engineer up to some of the leadership steps and then kind of into data and analysis?
Well, I'm a fan of learning throughout my life. That pervades every part of what I do, whether it's at work or in my other activities within the community or even within the family. And it's all about a progression. We learn a little bit here, a little bit there, and that allows us to grow and to become something more. It's really interesting. I started out as an engineer, even back before the Microsoft days. I started as a international development engineer for this little company called WordPerfect Corporation. And if you heard of them, it was before the advent of Windows. It was a DOS-based product on WordPerfect and on the group-wise products. And my passion has always been about creating. I love to tinker. I love to create. And so taking that passion forward allowed me to have a number of different steps within my career where, I don't know that I deserve all the roles that I stepped into. Oftentimes, I had prepared myself and I was at the right place at the right time to take advantage of that next role. And that's something that I learned in my upbringing, is that always to look around you, be observant of what's happening around you. And once you're able to note that, then you're able to take advantage of opportunities as they come up. And so my journey from an engineer up into product and program management into leadership, I think, has been a step-by-step fashion where I've learned different skills, tried to become the best I could at each one of those areas that I was in my skill growth that I needed to drive. And that allowed me to progress. So as an engineer, I love to create things. I would sit down, I would code, I would enable different products for this. I'd build architectures, and I had many opportunities to do that. I found that in the terms of that progression, I could create things to a certain extent as an engineer. And that led me into some of the program management, product management side, where I could now start to extend my thinking in terms of vision and looking at where I needed to take products. Instead of just for the sake of the hard technical challenges, I could now look at customer solutions or any of the user solutions of any particular implement I would build. And that took me into PM, and then from PM into leadership roles, which in a sense was just extending my influence and being sincere about different visions or technologies, bringing that together to create sets of solutions that had a meaningful impact. And so I look at that as a mentality of a mindset of growth and learning at every step of the way. And that gave me many opportunities to move into different roles that became available.
Oh, I love that too. It's not to stereotype you, but it's a bit of an engineer's answer. I like that. As necessity showed, and I could only create so far, and realized to operate this thing, I have to grow the perspective a little, and step into those spaces and learn as you went. Like that's an exciting way to sort of follow the trail. Tell me a little bit about getting into product development itself, and maybe a few of the ways that you're using data and analytics to sort of drive your strategic decisions.
I often say this, my title might say it's database, but I always tell people I'm not a data person. I'm a product and technologist. It's all about creating solutions for what the intended purpose is. Data is a core part of that, and I call data the new software. We think about not just the advent of business intelligence of what it was in the yesteryear, but now taking that data, drawing inferences from that data, creating automation techniques that allow you to move in the right direction is something that is of use to every product leader. And so when I think about being a product leader, it is about understanding the customer. And I think about this across a number of different dimensions. One dimension is, how do you think about the customer need? And understanding what their purpose is and leveraging anything that you're building. So that customer need is incredibly important. Once you understand the customer need, then it's simply a matter of understanding what technologies can you bring to bear to enable that customer need. And that can range in a number of different elements. It can range from the core platform, the core data that you're collecting and what you can do with that data. It ranges up into your middle layers, your middle tier. Where's the business logic? How are you interacting between different components? And that can increase in complexity depending upon the size of your product that you're building. And of course, that then measures up into the user experience. And thinking through that, I've managed many UX design teams as well, going through and looking at the behavioristics, looking at human interface guidelines and what are the right types of modeling you need to put together in a user interface to enable to bring that product home, because that's your interaction point with your customers and drawing that delight from your customers. So when you think about the product and stepping into that, I've had many opportunities starting at WordPerfect Corporation, leading into Microsoft with a number of different products that I had the fortune of being able to participate in and create and help to drive that customer insights. And that even led me into a number of different spaces and areas of different customer types at Microsoft and to NVIDIA and now to GoDaddy. So I would say in a nutshell, as I think about products, there are many different components that come together to build that product. And you have to be thinking about what the ultimate goal is for the customer or the user of that product, and ensuring that they have the right interface for them to be able to drive into, and that can operate at a scale that enables whatever your growth trajectory is for your product.
Yeah. Can you share an example, maybe like a couple signals that you were watching for customer experience, like maybe from the Xbox or NVIDIA?
Oh yes, Xbox was kind of interesting. We were working when I was at Xbox on a couple of different fronts. Of course, we were looking at the tail end of Xbox 360, and there were some major design changes that we were taking through that. And this was right as we were transitioning into Xbox One. I think there are some examples when we look at customer telemetry. There's a number of factors that you can derive from that. One is basically what their behaviors are. What is their usage pattern of your product? There's so much you can learn by usage patterns. Where are the drop-off points from user interaction in the UI? What UIs do they spend the most time in? What's being the most productive? How much are they able to derive from that as well? And so I would say that when you look at that customer telemetry, it isn't just about capturing everything about a user. It's not just about, at rudimentary capturing key clicks if you're thinking about a search engine. It's really understanding what is your customer intent, how are they making use of your user interfaces, looking at and pulling in that customer data, experimenting on this as well, and identifying which pattern of experience is operating the most efficiently for the customer, what's most delightful and enjoyable for them as well. And so we did a lot of that in Xbox. I learned a lot of that before that in Ad Center, as we were trying to build these interfaces for sellers or advertisers trying to publish ads to their customers and creating those assets. I kind of carried forward into Xbox, and what were we doing in our user interfaces to enable that compelling scenario that would keep bringing customers back and that would engage them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because with Xbox, you're both doing UI for interface with the game and access to all the media, and you're advertising to them at the same time with banners. You've kind of got a whole slew of things that you're watching, and I imagine a number of different segments to sort of look after as well, just because what was
That's
it, like
right.
10, 11 million units for Xbox 360, like in the first couple of weeks that came out?
Yeah, there were ultimately it was up to 70 or 80 million. You're looking at the customer base, but that's exactly right. When you're looking at that telemetry you're pulling in, you're looking for an engagement factor. Now, of course, as a business, you're also looking at what the revenue is you're generating. And in the Xbox case, it was looking at attachment of games to the console. A certain number of games would be sold, as well as participation in some of the online activities like Xbox Live Gold, and how you're engaging that. Now, I usually think of engagement for customers in three areas. One, and the first, is observational engagement, which means it's a very passive, you're monitoring, you're watching. Now, others have created huge businesses from this. Just look at Twitch. You look at all of that from the gaming metaphor, how many people are observing and viewing streaming sessions of any game. You take your pick, and people love to watch gaming. This is what you get in esports and entertainment. But there is a factor. If you're trying to build a user interface like Xbox that surrounds as a platform that particular game, how are you augmenting that with live chats and other pieces? So that next piece is moving from an observational or passive into a participation route. And once you start to participate, now you're starting to contribute at some point. Of course, the highest level is pure contribution, where the individuals are creating content on their own. And so really the vibrancy of Xbox was, how do you build a platform that engages all three of those elements? The observation, that participation in multi-network, types of scenarios where you're doing multiplayer, or you're trying to bring groups together in voice chats and other things. And then where's your contribution, and creating and generating dynamic content based upon your gameplay or whatnot. And that can extend into any product that you build, not just for gaming.
Oh yeah, and you're probably looking for similarities across segments to give weight, and like, what features am I going to invest in first? Because these 6 segments all care about something, and these 2 will, that kind of stuff will be great for dynamic conversations about where are we going to go next with the feature set.
Customer cohort, segmentation, they're all metaphors that people usually use in marketing, and thinking about what your outreach pattern is going to be. But it is much bigger than that. Yes, looking at your cohorts and at your segmentation, you're trying to identify where those customers and users, what niche are they fitting into, and are you delivering on that need, or are you trying to promote them into another niche, into another area, such as that engagement path? Are you trying to get them from passive observation up into participation and then up into contribution? Or in some cases, for some products like Twitch, you do have some contributors who are generating the content. You need that ecosystem, but you have millions, tens of millions of observers as well that feed that pipeline. And so there's the correct balance when you look at profiles for customers and your cohorts that you're building, to ensure that you're building the right features for each of those segments, and you're not boiling the ocean for everyone.
Yeah, super. And I really like the 3-phase breakdown, because that's so simple to sort of follow along. It's like, how engaged are these people? What level is it? And to your point too, like a Twitch, some companies thrive on even just that first stage being super healthy and helping the rest of the funnel.
Well, I love that. Gaming is near to my heart. I still game, and that was part of that. Of course, I have many other loves in different product categories. Had the opportunity to do many things, but there's another part of that engagement, which is when you get into the contribution, it's really around how are you meeting your customer needs. And so that can come in terms of, in the gaming community, you usually would see an Xbox your gaming score up here, and that could come with achievement badges you could get. And some people thrive on achievements. Other people thrive on just their perception, right? And not just the achievements, but how are they valued within that ecosystem as well. And then, of course, there's others, which is you're giving back in some ways. You're getting access to maybe free games or discounted games or seasons along those lines. So it can really come in a number of different forms, not just the engagement, but what is that response that you're trying to elicit from the customers so that you're able to drive the right experience for that. So it could be achievements or their reputation, or it could be other substantial rewards coming in the forms of discounting or cash back or things along those lines that help to generate increasing interest in your product.
Yeah. That's funny enough. That's how Bing kept me engaged in search when all my Microsoft points could be turned into donations. I wasn't even spending it on myself, but when I realized I could search and then turn around and send in number of dollars to a foundation that I cared about, that was a pretty cool outcome.
And that's a reputation play. So there are different aspects of your customers where you need to understand the behavioristics and what is most important to the customers. I tell this to my employees often, but I mean the same thing for customers. If we know what's important to our customers, we'll know what's important for us.
Yeah. Exactly. The virtuous cycle. Keep them happy, and we'll stay excited and engaged as well.
Absolutely.
Well, let's switch feet to the big topic, and that is the part where, as real people in the world trying to explore and learn our way through leadership, kind of as your story had told earlier, we'd like to share some of the inside thinking and some of those things that you don't always hear people sort of talk out. One of which is, what is it like to go at different stages through leadership from, say, like you were saying, from engineer to project program manager to director to now a C-suite level role? And it's sort of each phase, what kind of self-reflection did you have to do? What shifted for you to step into those new shoes?
It's a great question, and there are so many dynamics. We could spend so much time on this subject alone. But as you think about your growth, starting out, if you're not managing someone, you're an individual contributor, then most of what you're building is dependent upon you. You either have to have the right networking with other individuals or an ability to get and grasp concepts very quickly so that you can build. So as an engineer, that research phase was incredibly important, and understanding how to develop, how to code, how to build particular components. And it might not even be at the feature level. And you might graduate into a feature level as you grow as a developer. And so individual contributors really focus on the work at hand. And that could come from either partnering with other individuals who are knowledgeable, reading documentation and help, looking at samples, going out to Overstack, right, as a developer, and joining in a community question and answer so that you're able to develop your skill and your trade to be the best development engineer that you possibly can. As an individual contributor, that could also move into product and program management, or PM for short, where it still resides, all that responsibility still resides on your shoulders. You're an individual contributor trying to ensure that your work is having the impact. As a developer, it's probably a piece of code, or it may grow into features or sets of features as you grow up that chain, maybe into an architect, where you're thinking about the interaction between different components and how those individual parts make the system of your architecture and your development platform. PM is a little different, but similar in ways. You still have responsibility of creating, whether that is marketing material or specifications. It's translating your user intent into technology direction that you're trying to feed and hand off into your Scrum teams or your development teams so that you're able to execute on that as well. But there's a different element once you step into PM. And it's the same for management, and that is your realm of influence begins to grow. As a PM, you're having, a broader impact, maybe probably similar to what you might have as an architect who's higher up in the chain as an individual contributor. But that influence comes with a couple of things. And I usually tell this to my employees, it's two sides of the same coin. On one side is the merit. How skilled are you at being able to create your specifications and your influence? Will stem from that. And so that's usually based upon your merit. What are the skills that you bring to the table that's enabling this system to grow? The other side of that is perception. And that perception is, well, now that I've looked at the merit and the skills I've delivered, how well am I able to engage with other individuals? How am I able to influence those individuals? And what you find is that it's in game theory where you start with, a game. Everyone starts out in a game. Well, for the most part, you've got some really good gamers out there. Most people start out with a game and they play very poorly. They're getting used to how you're playing the game. The game might have certain controls about it. The game usually has you at very low hit points or whatever. You're playing an RPG, you're playing a campaign or a racing game or whatever else. You're usually starting at a starting point that the game has intended. Over time, as you level up and as you gain experience, things become easier. They don't become easier because you're brilliant or anything along those lines. Or that the system is there. They become easier because you become accustomed to how you're operating that. And as you're operating that, your mind helps you to extend to the next point, or the game will create challenges for you. And that's the same in your career as well, right? As you progress and as you learn and as you grow, you're building on one stack on top of the other. And as you make yourself available, then you become more capable over time if you're sincere in that. So from a developer all the way to a PM, your influence starts to increase as you're learning. You're now influencing others and their perception. You might find it hard to convince someone in the beginning, but if you show your merit, your perception level goes up to where you don't have to get into as many arguments to bring a concept forward, because people start to build trust. Now, as you grow into management, that becomes even more apparent, because now you're responsible not just for your own work, you're responsible for a team's work. And you're responsible to train that team. I often say, and it's a funny little quote from me, is that if a team fails, it's my fault as the manager. I haven't provided the right infrastructure or training or whatever else. If the team succeeds, it's their fault. So really looking at, as a manager, and moving from individual contributor into manager and stepping up into director and up into senior director and into the executive side of the house, it really is more of a growth of scope. The teams get a little larger. The product areas get larger. The interactions and complexity between those products may increase depending upon whatever your role is. And as you're learning through that, you're identifying ways to help reduce the chaos and create a cohesion so that you're able to deliver products at a high velocity with high quality. And so as I think about that transition, it's been a learning ramp. I enjoy seeing others grow because of my contribution. I tend to be a servant-based leader, which means, again, like I had said about customers, it's the same thing for my employees. If I know what's important to them, I'll know what's important to me. And so as I think about that growth for anyone who is looking to grow their careers, I think there's a couple of things. Number one, be patient. Not anyone is going to jump. There are a few notable exceptions, individuals I can call out who have been able to make those leaps, but they're far and few in between. Patience is the best tool. Ensuring that you're sincere, that you're ready to learn, you're hungry to step into new activities where it will teach you, and there are going to be bumps along the road. As you mature in that process, you will learn more and more at each and every step, where you will take on more responsibility. You'll be able to influence others. You'll be able to grow teams as well as technologies as well as business strategies, and your execution will increase along those lines. And then as opportunities come about, then if you're aware of your surroundings, you can take advantage of those opportunities, but keeping your core of learning, I think, is very critical.
Yeah. And Two, I think one thing that I found in my experience, and as I've talked with other leaders too, is that their time horizon and their goal setting starts to shift the higher they get up to. So not only is it about, to your point, growing influence, but also my goals as a director are now like quarters out rather than next week. I mean, don't get me wrong, we're all running at work to accomplish things and do whatever, but as I'm thinking about the next picture, my milestones are getting bigger and further out the higher up I go.
That's right. I think as you look at it, you can look at it from an aspect of execution. Then you start to move into tactical strategy, which is usually a shorter time frame, and you move from there into strategy, where you start to think a little bit more in the length of the period on how you're going to build those solutions for your customers. And oftentimes, as you're building product and thinking about it along those lines, you're not just building solutions for customers complaining about the current version of the product. You're trying to anticipate what the next big product is going to be that's going to lead them that direction. And you see many examples in the industry of individuals who have done just that. They're looking around corners, they're trying to anticipate what the future may hold, but more so, they're very immersed in the creative activity and building something that customers will need and listening to customers, synthesizing that, projecting, brainstorming, working together with others to build products that are driving the industry forward. So yes, as you mature, you have to take on board much more than just execution. You have to think about that, right? At least some percentage of your time, but you're moving up into those shorter term, 6 to 12 months tactical strategy, and you're moving up into the 5-year to 10-year strategies on where do you want to take products, all the way up to CEOs who are thinking about how are they moving and shifting entire companies and organizations.
Oh yeah, yeah. What was it like for you to learn patience as you had to shift into those new positions? And do you have any like tips on self-reflection or getting signals from your team while you're feeling out the timing?
Well, patience is key. And I say that not because I'm perfect at it. There are times, but I remember when I transitioned from a developer to a PM, it was in my younger years, but I thought, well, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to write a specification for the developer team. And then I went out and I wrote up all of the code. I zipped it into the file and I handed the spec to them and the code. And I said, your job's already done for you. I've already done it. All you need to do is check it in. So there's a bit of hubris that comes with that. And as you think about that patience and helping to build into that, I think you need to allow the learning process to happen. And we all learn differently. Some people are observational learners, and that's usually when you look at the higher levels of individuals, you'll see much more observational learning. You're learning from others so that you're able to reduce the time to learning, right? And if you're able to reduce time to learn, now you're able to stitch and pull together strategies to build. Other people are experiential learners. The only way they learn is to experience it for themselves. And that's a very good technique to use when you're first starting out. But as you grow in seniority, you need to be able to observe the world around you. Otherwise, you're not able to take advantage of opportunities, either for your customers or for your own career or for your business, whatever it may be. That observation becomes very, very important as you grow as a manager. So and as a leader. So you look at that process, and I've learned over the years to hopefully become a little bit more humble about what's there. The more I would say, the more I learn, the more I know that I do not know.
That's one of my favorite quotes. As I tell my kids that all the time, as I age, the more I learn, the more I realize how little I know, just because the scope of what is unknown now just gets even bigger in your face, right?
And isn't that fantastic? For we learners, that's the most amazing thing in the world. You open doors and there's so many more questions ahead of you. And again, for we learners, that's just that's a panacea. It's what we love.
I used to dread, early in my career, I dreaded the idea of turning over the stone at work because you knew you were going to find more problems. And after a while, it took me a while to mentally flip the script for myself. I was like, no, I can't wait to turn this stone over and find the other two things that are hidden underneath it. And let's tackle those two together.
That's great. I love that you share that, Jeff. I think it is the same thing. Many times in my career, I advanced and had opportunities because I would do the things other people didn't want to do, that they thought was beneath them. I think that's probably the other thing. Nothing is beneath you, right? It's engaging, it's helping others, it's serving others, it's that helping to grow. I often find, and I do a lot of teaching as well, the teacher learns more than the students. So the teacher has to prepare for a broader set of topics and categories than to be prepared for students' questions. And so if we can put ourselves in that place, every time we learn something from another teacher, we in turn can become a teacher. And if we become teachers, we're going to learn more.
Yeah, and reinforce and get some of that experiential practice on our side as well, right?
Absolutely.
One thing, and last question here before we wrap up, but from my observation in working, with you as a client and sort of seeing some of the environment that you've built, I am deeply impressed by the hypothesis building and the sort of learning your way through steps, especially as you're developing the product. What do you think, I guess, as a say a leader wants to step more into that space for themselves with their org, how do you sort of set that right foundation to get into that hypothesis testing and make that part of, core of your work?
Well, that's a great question, and it's not an easy answer. It depends upon the culture of the company or the organization you're working with. But I will say you have the ability to change cultures. A lot of and I hadn't covered this yet, but a lot of a leader's responsibility is change management. And how do you help people step into the growth mindset? Now, if you look at the empirical model, the scientific model, it's not just a scientific model. It's hits every path of life. Is that if you're willing to set your hypotheses, set a goal around those lines, and you have to be careful with goals as well, because systems and frameworks might help more than a goal. Great example is like I had a goal to be a VP. Well, I'm past that now. So what's my new goal? And a lot of people will focus on that goal unswervingly and dedicated in that way, but they forget about what are they really trying to achieve once they hit the goal. Well, what am I going to do now? So when you think about experimentation, setting your set of hypotheses, the goals or the systems that you're trying to operate on are going to result in learning. Now, it is by design that in life we learn through friction. That is how we learn. And you look at that in the natural world, that's how things progress as well. And so teaching a team to be unafraid to test is the first step in experimentation. And that's all right. If you're able to get a win really quickly, that's amazing. If you lose or you hit a loss, well, you've learned something on what not to do. Put that aside and then move on to the next thing. My father would always quote to me this saying, and I remembered it through the years, but he said, "For every worry under the sun, there is a solution or there is none. If there is one, hurry and find it. If there is none, never mind it." And so when you think about this progression in experimentation, it is building into the team this ability of, hey, you know what? We're testing something else. Now, when you're testing a hypothesis, you're time boxing it because you don't want to squander company resources. You want to help to drive toward the right customer outcome is going to be, and it's outcome based, not activity based. We tend to get stuck on activity based and think that is a positive outcome, when in reality, you need to be thinking about your goals and your outcomes and your system on what you're trying to do for your customers. And so I think that's the starting point. Helping the team to understand it's okay to set up hypotheses, structuring your organization in such a way, both physically as well as virtually within different feature squads or teams, in such a way that when they are operating, they have a goal of what you're trying to reach at your product, but they have the ability to experiment in their backlog. They have the ability to test that out. And in some cases, they're going to find winners and they can continue down that path. In other cases, losses. The thing you want to avoid is inconclusive results, because it's like water. You either have hot water or you have cold water. Lukewarm water isn't a great thing. Some people like it. I'm not a big fan of lukewarm water. You usually spit it out. But I think in that process, and really to implement this is how you can build high performance teams, because teams then become unafraid to test. they become unafraid to hit that loss because they know that loss is going to contribute towards a win in the whole journey of your experimentation. And that's why I focus so much on experimentation in that empirical model, because you're able to drive better solutions as a result of that learning.
Love all that. Yeah, I mean, I just to paraphrase a little bit back, what I heard was your job as a leader is really first and foremost change management, to set up the environment to make it sort of okay to fail or to come up with bad results, because you learned something along the way and you're going to adjust. Making room for the team to be curious and sort of, like you said, don't spend all of the money in the universe on experiments, but let's time box that and also give them room to be creative. All those things are great ways to kind of get started and really remind the leader sort of what their job is with their current hat on.
I always say, be curious, not judgmental. It really shows the disposition of the individual. If you're curious, you're constantly finding ways of how not to do things. Was it Edison that said, I learned 1,000 ways not to build a light bulb? Isn't that what we're all about? We're trying to improve upon that. And as we learn more, we bring more experience and skills, as you're able to group that together with other team members who have skills and experiences. Now you're sharing ideas on success patterns. And I think, I can't remember who quoted this, but if someone has an apple and you have an apple and you share, you each end up with one apple. But if you have an idea and I have an idea, we end up with 2 or more ideas.
I like that.
If we share them.
That's nice. Well, Travis, thank you so much for carving some time out of your day to share and really to give some great framing for the leaders watching this podcast about how they can think about experimentation and stepping through sort of the building blocks of leadership as they're moving up the path as well.
You bet. Thank you for having me.